Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
Welcome to Scary Stories NYC. I'm your old pal Bigfoot. Tonight we've got 2 for Tuesday. 2 Dogman stories for the price of 1, which was free. Let's jump right into the first one, which takes place on a day just as rainy as this day has been in New York City. Only this story doesn't take place in New York. No, this story takes place in an obscure, reconstructed, historical village called Hannahstown near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And that's why we call it the Hannahstown Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've got a story that took place 2 years ago when I was 19. I went with my parents to a place called Hannahstown, the historical recreation, I mean. I wandered away from the tour and nearly paid for it dearly when I came face to face with the Pennsylvania Dogman. Now, Hannahstown is just southeast of Pittsburgh, which is located in the southwest corner of Pennsylvania, just east of Ohio, north of West Virginia, and northwest of Maryland and Virginia. There's still a town called Hannahstown just down the road a ways from the historical recreation, but, in fact, neither of them is the original Hannahstown, which was burned to the ground in 1782 by a unified army made up of the British and the Seneca people. Back then, Hannahstown was more important than Pittsburgh, and was a key town for recruiting people to fight for the colonists against the British. The town was named for Robert Hannah, a tavern owner who allowed his establishment to double as a courthouse, the first European-style court west of the Allegheny Mountains. So these days, Hannahstown may refer to a small suburban town of modern houses and backyards and streets, or the recreated historic town, which serves as an educational facility, informing us what life was like back then. Neither of them are the original, but then, what is these days? So, one weekend my parents decided to go to the historical town, and I had nothing to do, so I went with them. As soon as I got there, though, that forest behind the place really caught my attention. I love walking in woods more than almost anything else. I enjoy the way they get dark even on a bright day. I like that they are cooler inside than outside. It's almost like being inside and outside at the same time, and everything is alive, for better or worse. The birds sing a pretty tune, and the bugs bite. It smells differently in a woods than it does anywhere else. Yes, some of that smell is from everything rotting underneath you to keep the forest alive, but it's just as much the smell of the vegetation as well. Things even sound different to me in the forest. My parents were heading on a tour they give at the village, which lasts over an hour. I begged them to cover for me so I could slip away and spend that hour in the forest. I'm sure I'm not allowed to go back there, but they consented after I point out that the big, ugly C-shaped swirl they cut in the woods was there for a reason. It might look very unattractive, but it virtually eliminates the possibility of anyone getting lost back there. All you have to do is walk until you find the big white path cut out of the trees, and you can see from there where to go to find your own way back. Plus, I had a compass app on my phone and GPS. I couldn't get lost. I asked them to text me or signal me somehow when the tour was winding up, and I could meet them back at the starting point. They ran interference for me, and I split off to spend some alone time in nature while my parents learned about colonial life. I felt pretty elated once I took one step inside those woods. I headed roughly north to get up around that big ugly sea path. I kept note of the time, figuring to start meandering back about 30 minutes from the time I entered. I followed whichever path looked interesting to me, not making any note on the phone or mentally as to where I was going. I just walked around looking at the most interesting rocks, the most interesting holes, and the most interesting knots in the most interesting trees, enjoying myself in the timelessness of the place. I remember thinking that I could have been there 100 years before or 100 years in the future, and it would essentially be the same experience, even if 95% of the trees and all of the animals had been replaced several times over by then. When the time came that my phone beeped its 30-minute alarm to me, I checked my GPS to see exactly where I was in relation to the sea path. The program got stuck, and so I rebooted it and went to the compass app, which also was not working. When the GPS app came back on, it was telling me that my Wi-Fi wasn't working. I turned the Wi-Fi off because that app should work with or without Wi-Fi. Still, the third time I checked, it was still giving me a nag screen demanding I connect to Wi-Fi. This was getting annoying. I rebooted the entire phone and began walking back in the direction I was pretty sure was south. I didn't recognize anything on the way back, which was a bit disorienting. All of the same features of the woods that I loved so deeply on the way in became somewhat disturbing on the way out. I was beginning to feel as though I were in a fun house. Nature's disorienting fun house. My phone seemed to take forever to reboot, and the compass app got stuck in the middle of loading. I tried it again, and it just opened a black screen and acted like it was finished. I tried the GPS app and got the same frustrating nonsense message about me needing to turn the Wi-Fi on. I was certain I had used this before on a camping trip and it worked on the phone without Wi-Fi. I rebooted everything again and stuck my phone in my pocket. I would just walk until I found the big ugly sea path cut out of the woods. That's what it was there for after all. I told myself I had nothing to worry about, but I told myself that because I was really feeling nervous about this for the first time. I heard these sounds that at first I took to be flying insects buzzing around my ears. I swatted at the air and they only got louder. Were the bugs inside my ears? Confused, I stopped and I spun in a circle. That buzzing, it was all around. I could hear it from the left and I could hear it from the right behind me. I could feel it in my toes as well. It wasn't a buzzing really. It was a very low vibration. Then, looking behind me to my right, I saw eye shine popping out of the darkness under some trees. It was an animal glaring at me, and it was one of the sources of that deep, unhappy noise. I could hear more of it to my left, and I began to comprehend that these were animals generating this uncomfortable vibration, and they were clearly unhappy to see me in their woods. I resumed walking away from the eye shine and those mean sounds. I tried to look casual, but I went twice as fast as before. I could now hear things moving through the woods behind me. I heard at least 3 different somethings back there. I began to sweat. Was I being hunted? Maybe these were security guards. Maybe I should just ask them the way out and play it innocent. But somehow, these didn't seem like security guards. Then, I stumbled into a brightly lit clearing in the woods, shaped kind of like a backwards letter D. I was walking along the straight side, with a line of trees to my right. To my left, the field moved out about 150 feet at its widest point. Right around the middle of that length, standing out in the daylight, stood something with eyes shaped the same as the eye shine I had seen in the darkness of the tree cover. It had to be taller than any man I had ever seen. It was a giant. It was covered in hair all over like a Bigfoot. But this thing had the head of some kind of canine. This was either a wolf man or a Dogman. It was also emitting this low-frequency vibration at me, which in the open sounded much like a tiger growl. This thing did not in any way resemble a cat, but the growl was more like a big cat than anything else. This was a vision out of a nightmare, and I was filled with such fear that I wasn't sure if I was losing my mind. I broke into a run and kept running back into the woods. I sure hoped I was heading south, back toward the historic village recreation and my parents. I now could hear the dogmen or wolfmen in all directions behind me. The sound of their growling made me feel deeply sad inside, and also scared and hopeless. I wonder, in retrospect, if they were using some sort of natural infrasound ability on me, or if I just felt so badly because I wasn't sure if I was going to make it out of this experience alive. Possibly a bit of both. I wouldn't know. I fell over a log and ended up with my head out of the forest and back in the big C-shaped swath cut out of the woods. I was certain I hadn't seen the path from inside the trees, and I never would have headed toward it if I hadn't fallen by accident. It was almost as though something didn't want me to see it, that something was preventing me from seeing it. At any rate, I did have my accidental fall, and I did find my way out, and I easily made it back to my appointment with my parents on time. When I told them the story later, of course, my compass and GPS were working fine, so they both seemed to regard my tale with a bit of skepticism. It was just as well they didn't believe me, though. It served as a warning to me how people would think I was crazy or making it up if I told them what really happened to me. So, I think I started telling one girlfriend about it once, but basically, this is my first time really telling the whole story to anyone but my parents. I don't want any of you to think that I'm telling this story because I have a problem with that historic village. I don't. In fact, I think they've got a cool thing going on. The reason I'm telling you this story is so that you'll know. If you go to a historic educational town or village, stick to the tour and follow the rules. Then you'll be safe. Because if you don't, you may end up being chased and cornered by the Pennsylvania Dogman. Stay tuned, we've got a story of the Louisiana Dogman, known as the Rougarou, right after this. And now, get ready for an all-new, completely uncensored, slightly bloody, and absolutely terrifying new Dogman story. Oh wait, YouTube won't allow me to tell you stories like that on this channel. If you want to hear that, you're going to have to go to peterbernard.com and sign up for our paid subscribers club. You can choose any price you can afford for a 1-month subscription, and then every weekend we tell you a story YouTube would never allow us to tell you on this channel. See you this Sunday for an all-new, very scary, completely uncensored Dogman story. The Rougarou that came to say goodbye. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I used to think the Rougarou was named after the sound it made because I would hear it howling and moaning in the night when I stayed with my auntie. At least, she told us that sound was being made by the Rougarou. Later, I found the name was actually a corruption of Lougarou, the legendary man-wolf of Louisiana. When Auntie died, we had to go through all her stuff to decide what to keep, what to throw out, and what to auction off. My sister and I were spending our Saturdays and half our Sundays there, driving back to our mother's place for dinner and to go over the details. We were both in our early 20s and both living in apartments in New Orleans, but neither of us had been on our own even a year yet, and we were still close to our mom at the time. She lived with her boyfriend, who seemed to take good care of her, even if he didn't seem to enjoy visits from my sister or me very much. As long as he was good to my mom, I didn't really care if he liked me or not. So, anyway, my sister and I were up in the attic, going through old crates and finding incredible things. Incredible to us, at least. Photos of our auntie when she was young and beautiful. Things she used to wear. Letters she had received. We learned a number of things about her which we had never known, and before we knew it, the sun was going down, and it was time for us to be getting going. As we began assessing our sorting and deciding what to bring with us to show our mom that night, we heard it. We heard that sound, that Rougarou sound from our childhood. It sent fear shooting through me like cold lightning, and I could see by my sister's expression that she heard the sound too. It was this noise like a very large dog going, ooh, but interrupted by these guttural noises, so it really did sound like he was shouting something like, Rougarou. I literally froze, my mind refusing to accept what I had just heard. I looked around for some better reality frame to latch onto. My sister suggested strongly that we leave, and she beat it out of the attic. My brain couldn't come up with a better idea, so I followed her. We never really found out what was making that noise in our childhood, my logical mind said. Had I spoken that aloud, I wondered, or had I just thought that to myself? It might just be a dog, you know, my logical mind continued, and my sister answered me, so I guess I had in fact been speaking aloud. Is that a little dog? Asked my sister, pointing out the back window at the thing on the back lawn. There was something so large that it looked like a statue had been erected on the lawn. Right in the middle of the grass stood this immense, dark gray figure, as though Arnold Schwarzenegger had become a wolfman, or as if Anubis had taken up weight training. This was like if the Hulk had grown fur and a dog head, and it was just there in the middle of our auntie's backyard. It howled its long rougarou cry, which sounded so sad that I found tears streaming down my face. I was overcome by emotion, and I mourned as that monster sang its sad tune outside. I didn't know how deep emotions could go before, and I didn't understand how deeply sad someone could feel. I was somewhat aware that my sister was talking on her phone, but I wasn't prepared when she thrust that phone in my face, saying, "You talk to her." I talked to whom? "Hello?" I said uncertainly toward the glass box in my hand. It was my mother. She wanted to know when we were getting back. I stuttered something about the Dogman, then looked out on the lawn and saw it was no longer there. "You're no help," my sister said, grabbing the phone from my hand. She was insisting that our mother and her boyfriend come over and stand guard while we got in her car for the drive back. She was afraid to go outside alone because of the Dogman. I felt she had a point as I wandered around the house looking to see where the creature had gone to. I didn't see it any place. Had it run off to the forest? Was it up on the roof, ready to pounce? I grabbed the phone and shouted into it, demanding my mother and her boyfriend both drive down at once. My shocked mother was silent for a moment. Then she said they'd be at the house as soon as they could. She was good to her word, and they parked in the driveway with their high beams on, brilliantly illuminating the driveway for us. It sure looked like the coast was clear, but that didn't stop us from both running to get in my sister's car and double-checking that all the doors were locked. When the engine was warmed up, we all drove back to Mom's place silently. Well, I'm sure Mom's boyfriend was complaining, but we didn't have to hear it at least. So, the last few days going through stuff in that old house, we did as a quartet. Or, well, me, my sister, and my mom with her annoyed boyfriend standing guard downstairs. I don't know if Mom believes anything about the rougarou, but at least she was willing to humor both of us about it. I think it was coming to say goodbye to our auntie, and to me and my sister as well. At least, I hope that's what it was saying, because I never, for any reason whatsoever, ever want to see that rougarou again. Not ever again. For the rest of my life.
If you enjoyed this, please click like or consider subscribing. Remember to click the bell icon or you won't get notifications. If you want to listen to Bigfoot's secret uncensored story each Sunday, just go to peterbernard.com and become a paid subscriber. See you tomorrow. Same dog time, same dog channel.
Come back for more scary stories.